Hi, my name's Glenn. I'm 76 years old, married. Been married now for 30, it's going on 33 years. Second time around. I grew up in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. Grew up on a farm, loved it. And then as things went by, my my father was a dairy farmer, but milked like 20 cows, and he had to make changes if he wanted to stay in business, so he got out of the dairy business in the late 50s. I remember going to the dairy with him to haul the milk occasionally, getting up real early in the morning because he milked like 4:30 in the morning, and walking up to the barn in the dark as a, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 year old. And anyway, life goes on, and in the late 50s, my parents decided to turn our farm into a resort for people from New York City and surrounding area to come in the summer, stay for a week, or weekends in the spring and fall. Summers it was strictly a week. And we started small, I think it was 4 bedrooms upstairs and 2 baths at that time. We added a second, I'm sure, at that point. And then over the years expanded to the point where we had, I think like 9 bedrooms altogether, and probably 7 or 8 bathrooms or more. Anyway, and I started doing the guiding when I was 9, once in a while I'll do a little bit. And as I got older, I took the position when I was about 12 of doing all the horseback riding, the guiding, and there's a lot of responsibility for somebody that's like about 12 years old, but I enjoyed it. The people from the city came, check-in was on Saturday afternoon. We didn't do riding till Sunday afternoon, and then after that, for the rest of the week, we did 2 rides a day, morning and afternoon. Had 3 different rides. We had a starter ride, it was a short, slow ride, one a little bit faster, a little bit longer, and then one that we did a little bit of cantering maybe, and depending on the riders. And it was usually about an hour long. The middle one was about a half hour, and did that till I was 21. And believe it or not, when I was like 16 in 1966, I was making $100 a week in the summer on tips. So that was pretty decent. And when I was 16, that fall, my uncle needed somebody to milk cows for him. So I said, what the heck? He's paying big bucks, $20 a week. Milk twice a day, 7 days a week. And so I did that. And then when I graduated high school, my father took over the farm. Plus we had, of course, the resort business. But it was only in the morning and in the evening milking that I was responsible for. And did that till I was 21. And then we moved north, near Watertown, New York, a little town called near Depauville. But anyway, it was hard to farm it there. The land was all clay. It was totally different than what we were used to. We were used to land that you could get on with machinery, 365 days a year, and there it was very seasonable when it wasn't raining, and it rained a lot, especially that while we were there. And it didn't last very long, and we got out of that. And by that point, I got married and was on my own, and I was involved in dairy farming off and on most of my life, but moving on it was in 1993, I got married to my wife now, Mary Lynn is her name, and it was a big change, because I was a bachelor there for at least a year or so, and I didn't really care for it. Anyway, we got married, and I moved to where she was living because I was living in an apartment at the time, and she had her house. So I moved there, got a job milking cows for somebody else. And I did that for a few years, and then I was able to start my own business. I built a small greenhouse. It was 20 by 50, and grew mainly annuals and hanging baskets for Mother's Day. And that went well. I was still working full time. And at that point, I decided that fall, I decided to add 2 more greenhouses. So I added a 20 by 100 and a 14 by 50. and fill them up. And well, I told my boss that if all goes well, this was in May, that February, the following February, the next year, that the last day of the month was my last day of work. And come about December, he came along and said, "Are you still leaving in the end of February?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Well, I got somebody to replace you, and this will give you plenty of time to train them." So I did. And then I went full-time into the greenhouse business, which is a seasonal business, but which was great because it gave us our summers. My wife was a teacher in New York State, and she had summers off. So it was nice. We could do whatever we wanted in the summer, and we used the greenhouse money as entertainment, I guess you could say. Well, we paid quite a few bills with it, but then we'd travel and do different things. We had a camper at one time, and had property in North Carolina at one time. We were getting at the point where by 2005 or so, we were wondering, what are we going to do when we retire? My wife retired actually, I think in 2004, 3 or 4. She was 55 and could retire, so she did. I worked till I was 60 and retired. We went over our finances and thought, yeah, we could do it. I won't be, able to get Social Security till I'm 62, but we decided to do it, and I sure am glad. We spent that first year in a cabin that we built. It's about 4 miles away, but it was a mile back in the woods, and we spent a year there while we were figuring out what to do, where to go. We had checked out several places, North Carolina, went to Dandridge, Tennessee, like that, and we finally settled for South Carolina because it was a little bit warmer, and we moved down here in 2011. If you hear that scratching noise in the background, that's our cat. No! Anyway, he's just a kitten and he's nothing but trouble. So then anyway, we retired, and 2011 was a rough summer that year. We knew that we had 2 of our parents were not going to be around a whole lot longer, and all of a sudden, my mother-in-law was going downhill fast, and I got a call that my father was in the hospital and on life support, and I needed to get there. So that was on a Sunday. I headed south. Sunday I got down there and went to see my father and talked to him. He couldn't talk, but he could answer a couple of questions. The important questions were, did you want to get off these machines? And he shook his head, definitely yes. And then I said, are you ready to go and be with your family in heaven? And it was a definitely yes on that. And it was definitely no on the machines, obviously, because he wanted off. He was 87 and he was ready to go. For the past years, he'd say, gosh, I just wish God would call me home. He was, he wanted to go. So anyway, he got his wish. But anyway, my wife couldn't be with me, I couldn't be with her, and her mother died Monday evening, that Monday. My father died Tuesday. Wednesday or Thursday, I headed home to be with her and for my mother-in-law's funeral. So went through all that, and then Sunday morning early, I got a call that my mother had passed away. So we had a pretty full 6 days of, it's part of life. We know that the day we are born, the next day we're one day closer to our end. We all will die. We all will go someplace. Where you go, that's totally up to you. I'm not going to preach to you. I am a Baptist, born again, Christian, and I'm not going to push my faith on people, but I will say that through Jesus is the only way to get to heaven, and leave it at that. So anyway, life goes on. I'm going to keep this video short. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but today I do have a fish room, and obviously I have a 125-gallon fish tank behind me. I've had fish most of my life. I got my first tank when I was 12, 13, something like that. A neighbor had fish, and I went to see her, and she was a teacher and had a tank in her room and said, at the end of the summer, at the end of the school year, I'm taking down the tank and bringing it home. If you're interested in it, I'll sell it to you. So, oh boy, that was my first adventure into fish. It was a 29-gallon tank. And I set that up and got a start in the fish business, raising tropical fish, and loved it. And I did that off and on most of my life, but a couple of years ago I got real serious, built the fish room, and at some point we'll go out and I'll show that. If you stick around, you need to subscribe to my channel and support me, please. I'm not sure what I'll talk about, but we'll find something. I do want to talk about things that are different in the South versus the North. I'll go over one right now, and that's fire ants. No fire ants in the North. You come down here and there are fire ants, and they are nasty little beasts. I've many times got into one and didn't realize it till you were crawling with them on your legs, and they're just no fun. If they get on you like that, you've got to wash them off. Otherwise, you really get stung if you try and wipe them off, or bit, or whatever they do, but it's nasty. The only thing I found is to spray on the bites. WD-40 will take the sting away. To get rid of the hills, I found that you can get at Amazon, there's a powder called Martin's, and I have no affiliation with that. It's called Martin's Surrender. And it's probably $15 to $18 for a 1 pound can. And you pry the lid off of that and make a small hole in the top so you can use it as a shaker and shake it on the nest. I just shake maybe a half a teaspoon on a nest, and they're gone the next day. They're eliminated. And when they're the biggest problem, of course, is when it rains. When it rains, they move. So every time you mow your lawn, you have to carry a can on the lawnmower. I have a 0 turn. I mow anywhere from 1 to 2 acres, depending on whether I have any animals, which we don't right now in the pasture. And I mow that every couple of weeks. So I don't know how this is gonna go, but I've always wanted to do a YouTube channel, and here I am. So all I'm gonna say is God bless and have a great week. See you later.